A century after monsters overrun Earth, humanity survives inside a handful of fortified cities, where Fortress 54 warns everyone to avoid the mysterious abysses opening beneath its streets. And near one of those forbidden pits, a battered student named Lin Ling runs from brother Kai, whose noble status apparently makes harassment feel like a generous scholarship in his warped little mind. So Kai corners Lin Ling at the edge and offers her one brutal choice. But she exposes him as a violent thug who attacks classmates and silences anyone willing to testify, only for Kai to boast that her jailed brother leaves her no choice but to obey him. Then he reaches for Lin Ling, promising mercy if she forgets her dignity and goddess Lin, until a sudden impact rises from the abyss beneath their feet, drawing the attention of Kai's henchmen just as the ground starts answering back. Because a hulking, bone-faced beast has climbed straight out of the darkness, and the entire gang recognizes a B-class monster powerful enough to slaughter awakened fighters. Yet Kai cannot run before the creature charges directly toward him and Lin Ling, so the fearless noble instantly offers Lin Ling as dinner to save himself, pure aristocratic courage. Except the beast ignores his disgusting bargain and fixes its attention on Kai instead, before driving one massive fist straight into the bully, leaving Kai crumpled beside Lin Ling while his henchmen desperately call for help, then scatter across the wasteland with absolutely no intention of rescuing their precious leader. But the bone-faced beast catches the first runner and cuts his escape brutally short, while another henchman barely reaches his phone before a giant hand closes around him, and the beast crushes the last witness with Lin Ling still watching from the ground, then looms over her with enough blood on its hands to make survival look extremely unlikely, leaving Lin Ling to decide that death by monster still beats surrendering to Kai. But instead of attacking her, the creature suddenly launches itself away, abandoning the confused student as it rockets clean over the fortress wall. One enormous leap carries the fugitive beast across the city toward a hidden destination, while news of the academy deaths reaches the furious father of the murdered noble, who slams his desk hard enough to make the staff reconsider every career decision, demanding to know how his son died when the abyss monitors detected no approaching monster. So the terrified employees suggest the bone-faced beast somehow slipped in from outside, an explanation he rejects because those creatures are supposedly too stupid to plan an ambush, and whether the killer is human or monster, he orders it hunted before it escapes Fortress 54. Unfortunately for the search party, their target is already bounding across the rooftops, leaving the city behind and returning to a secluded valley carved with monstrous stone faces, where several identical beasts wait around a silver-haired man instead of attacking him. And the blood-stained killer immediately kneels before that man, calling him master, revealing Lin Yuan as its controller while he warns pet number 1 that trackers will follow the blood, then recalls both active beasts into a pair of black cards and orders them to rest, because Wang Kai once sent Lin Yuan to prison, and this carefully arranged death settles the debt. All thanks to Lin Yuan's trump card in this monster-filled world, the monster capture system. Any monster that sends ordinary fighters running can become another weapon under Lin Yuan's control, and with his revenge finished, he orders pet number 3 to carry him back to prison, letting the bone-faced beast launch them over Fortress 54 in a single bound. Because these B-class creatures are his strongest captures so far, with 3 powerful servants in total, yet even monsters that crush ability users and novice awakened fighters are nowhere near enough for Doomsday. So Lin Yuan recalls his ride the moment they reach the prison perimeter, determined to win his freedom legally before expanding his monster collection any further, while a final black card receives orders to handle everything he must leave outside, releasing a terrifying Spider-Woman to continue her master's plan in secret. Meanwhile, trouble gathers at the Wang family's royal mansion, as Lin Ling tells her friend Ren Yu that Wang Kai imprisoned her brother in Blackwater Prison, and accepting Kai's engagement was supposedly the only way to secure Lin Yuan's release, since the Wang clan controls the fortress through an academy director father and a 9th-tier ability user brother. But the crowd ahead suddenly interrupts Lin Ling's miserable bargain, drawing both students toward a gathering that has swallowed the entire mansion entrance, where they discover the Wang family holding a lavish funeral for Kai, the fortress bully now reduced to a portrait, a coffin, and some very expensive flowers, leaving Ren Yu stunned that the untouchable tyrant could die so suddenly, while Lin Ling sees his downfall as justice and rushes to bring the news to her imprisoned brother, only for a cold voice near the doorway to question why anyone is mourning his son, as Kai's father informs Lin Ling that death does not cancel the promise she made to his family, and offers to erase Lin Yuan's conviction with a single command, provided Lin Ling still marries Wang Kai exactly as promised. Though the obvious problem is that her intended husband is already lying inside a coffin, a minor inconvenience to his father, who demands a ghost wedding so Kai will not be lonely underground, forcing Ren Yu to ask whether Lin Yuan will truly be released if Lin Sling accepts this madness. But the deal requires Lin Ling to be buried beside Wang Kai, with jewelry dressing up the nightmare, while refusal means her father and brother will take her place in Kai's grave. And even Ren Yu's desperate warning cannot break the trap closing around her friend. So Lin Ling sacrifices herself and agrees to marry the dead man. Inside the Wang clan's secret chamber, Kai surprised father immediately discusses what comes next, as ninth-tier ability user Wang Yan vows to kill everyone connected to his younger brother's death, while his father pretends to spare Lin Ling's family but quietly orders both men eliminated, starting with an arranged accident for Lin Yuan inside Blackwater prison that very day. Soon afterward, every cell in Blackwater unlocks at once, beginning Slaughter Night, when prisoners can kill freely until the doors close again, and one bald ringleader makes Lin Yuan the shared target of this convenient little riot, receiving immediate agreement from a crowd that clearly came prepared. Before the hired thugs march toward the silver-haired prisoner they expect to crush like an insect, while a nearby inmate quietly warns Lin Yuan that Blackwater's killers were paid to murder him, then begs him to run before the newly opened cells unleash every murderer in the block. But Lin Yuan keeps reading and wonders why he should flee from men coming to him, calmly deciding that anyone bold enough to enter his cell is welcome to try taking his life. Just as the armed mob charges through the unguarded corridor to finish the contract, leaving Lin Yuan's nervous neighbor certain the killers have finally arrived, until every sound outside stops at once and Lin Yuan closes his book to investigate, with the sudden silence proving far more disturbing than the approaching footsteps, because the entire mob now hangs immobilized in a web of supernatural silk, and Lin Yuan's spider servant descends above the bald leader before he can understand the trap, turning her silked killing array into an instant execution ground for every hired attacker, while the surviving neighbor stares at Lin Yuan like he just discovered Blackwater's personal demon, and our boy explains his simple apocalypse policy: leave him alone or lose everything. Elsewhere, the conspiracy continues safely behind the warden's reinforced office doors, where the royal mansion's steward asks whether Lin Yuan's death is guaranteed, and Warden Tianqi confidently claims the prison bosses will crush such a helpless target, prompting the steward to demand Lin Yuan's head as a betrothal gift for the ghost wedding, before Deputy Warden Bai Lin senses something powerful approaching from outside, though the steward assumes it is merely the frenzied prisoners rushing their position, while Tianqi boasts that even a tank could not break his fortified door. One boast that lasts exactly until a massive fist smashes straight through the steel, sending the steward, Tianqi and Bai Lin scrambling as their secure hideout becomes an open room, and the next blow tears away the remaining wall with embarrassing ease, revealing Lin Yuan beside one of his bone-faced beasts, casually greeting the men who ordered his death, while the steward recognizes the impossible master and monster connection and threatens to report him, only for Lin Yuan's pet to silence that threat by launching the steward through the wall, leaving Bai Lin stunned because no official record mentions humans controlling B-class monsters. As Tianqi retreats behind Blackwater's reputation and warns Lin Yuan that killing him means war, then promises the fortress's strongest prison guards will eventually tear one lone controller apart. So Lin Yuan simply asks whether he means the soldiers already standing outside, where the entire armed guard corps advances behind shields with weapons ready, before surrounding Tianqi and aiming every rifle directly at their own warden, leaving him to plead with the soldiers he personally trained not to make this suicidal mistake, except Lan Yuan's spider servant has already turned every guard into one of her puppets, and Tianqi drops to the floor, blaming the Wang family while begging his intended victim for mercy. So Lin Yuan considers the request and orders him to surrender the warden's authority chip, which Tianqi unlocks and hands over despite claiming it will be useless to a prisoner, before Lin Yuan dismisses him with a casual farewell and the puppets chamber their weapons, making Tianqi realize far too late that surrendering the chip never included surviving, as his own guards unleash a merciless storm of bullets from every direction, because Lin Yuan has separate plans for the authority chip, and none require keeping Tianqi alive. He places that chip in Bai Lin's hands and greets Blackwater's suddenly promoted new warden, assuring the stunned deputy that cooperation means she does not have to share Tianqi's fate, since emergency law lets an authorized deputy inherit command, provided Bai Lin swallows one spider egg, a loyalty test that makes the cost of Lin Yuan's protection painfully clear, yet Bai Lin chooses survival and accepts the egg without another argument, earning permission to keep her own will as long as she obeys her new master, and she immediately recognizes that Blackwater itself has become Lin Yuan's private territory, before asking for the first assignment that can prove her usefulness. So he reveals an unfinished S-rank metallic mimic beast awaiting military containment, then orders Bai Lin to volunteer Blackwater's beast pit as the receiving facility, a prize the prison could never normally afford, but one that could become his first S-rank capture. While Bai Lin handles the application, Lin Yuan demands immediate release and notice when the monster arrives, despite her warning that Wang Yan and the entire clan will strike the moment he leaves prison, because hiding only delays the inevitable, and Lin Yuan would much rather attack first. His first stop outside is the Thunder Ability Training Hall, where he enters beneath a hood and quietly studies the people inside, as trainees mock him for visiting a dojo instead of saving Lin Ling from today's ghost wedding, guessing he wants help from the headmaster or senior Ning, who recently left for the Northern Abyss. Then dismissing Lin Yuan as a powerless loner, nobody would risk offending the Wang clan to protect, until one hall member notices the arriving senior and loudly announces his presence, revealing the blonde photographer Wei Xing, who reports that every guest en route for the ghost wedding has been mapped. Though 3 electronic bugs watching the Wang network are failing, so Lin Yuan promises to replace them, then summons an entire swarm of flying monsters and leaves Wei Xing staring at the impossible upgrade. Because Blackwater's beast den gave Lin Yuan enough fresh insects to rebuild his surveillance force many times over, and if only 3 bugs can watch the prison and Wang clan, this swarm can monitor half of Fortress 54, feeding synchronized intelligence straight to Lin Yuan's phone as he orders Wei Xing to track everyone involved in the wedding. But Wei warns that all 4 members of Wang Yan's elite 9th-tier team have returned for the ceremony. While the bone-faced killer remains missing, and a monster-proof barrier now surrounds the wedding grounds, so Lin Yuan reminds his only ally in the anti-Wang alliance that survival matters, because his plan is already moving, just as it did 3 months earlier, when Lin Yuan rescued Wei Xing after the photographer was nearly caught spying on Wang Kai, inspiring Wei to pledge his life to bringing down the family that had terrorized them both. Since beneath his old habit of secretly photographing campus girls, Wei carries revenge for one victim Wang Kai threw into an abyss, and another part of Lin Yuan's plan now approaches through a rocky canyon inside a heavily armored vehicle, where the driver asks a councilman whether he truly intends to officiate a wedding between a living girl and a corpse, only to hear that a commoner should consider marriage into the noble Wang family the greatest honor of her life, even though the ceremony's final step requires the bride herself to die, with the councilman proudly volunteering to cut Lin Ling's throat so she can serve Wang Kai in the underworld, while dismissing the driver's concern that the escaped bone-faced beast is still somewhere nearby, because their black dust transport supposedly withstands tank fire and cannot possibly be breached by one monster. Right before an enormous bone-faced hand clamps around the armored vehicle and proves confidence remains this world's deadliest weakness. The driver finally recognizes the escaped bone-faced beast and starts screaming inside their supposedly invincible shell, but the councilman insists its hydraulic armor can survive one monster at full strength and orders him to keep moving, until 2 more beasts join the first and begin tearing at black dust from every side, exposing one tiny flaw in the official intelligence. There was never only one attacker, because Lin Yuan watches from the canyon above and calmly commands all 3 pets to strike, sending the first monster's full power crashing into armor still reading 100%, before a barrage of relentless fists reduces its defenses to 70, then 1% as the 3 beasts turn military engineering into a very expensive punching bag, and finally -200 when black dust explodes into scattered metal and burning debris. Only the councilman survives the wreck, dragged from the ruins by the same creature he claimed could never break in, then awakens to find Lin Yuan and all 3 bone-faced beasts staring down at him. So the noble official abandons his dignity and offers an enormous reward in exchange for rescue, while Lin Yu quietly takes the ceremonial blade intended for Lin Ling and asks whether this is the ghost wedding's execution weapon, making the councilman understand exactly what kind of rescue his captor has in mind, before Lin Yuan repurposes the blade and ends the officiant's role in the ceremony with one clean slash. With the corrupt councilman left on the road and the beast guarding the body, Lin Yuan prepares the more useful part of his ambush, raising another monster card and telling a servant named Shadow that its turn has arrived, which summons a one-eyed creature whose many limbs emerge inside a storm of living darkness, then activates shadow snatching technique over the fallen official, sending a mass of black energy into the corpse, as Lin Yuan steals more than just the councilman's invitation. Shadow reshapes him into a perfect copy of the councilman for 2 hours, more than enough time to fulfill the ghost marriage pact, and the disguised Lin Yuan soon approaches Narcissus Noble's cemetery, where guests gossip about the beautiful bride being offered to the elite, then reassure themselves that Wang Yan's powerful 9th-tier allies have turned the ceremony into an inescapable trap for his brother's killer. Just as a violent landing inside the grounds proves those allies have arrived in force, with Wang Yan's 9th Abyss Squad descending beside the defeated body of a D-class underworld ram, led by the feared fighter rumored to be approaching an even greater awakening, while one blonde teammate celebrates because the Wang clan promised him permission to massacre Lin Ling's entire civilian district after the wedding, and Lightning threatens Barrier Master Yin with death if even one monster breaches the cemetery, though Observer Yu claims his surveillance will detect anything approaching the barrier long before that happens, then races away the moment one of Lin Yuan's tiny insects appears nearby, as Yin confidently predicts the psychically gifted lunatic will trace the monster straight back to its hidden controller. The little spy bug deliberately lands on an exposed power unit and shocks itself, giving Observer Yu a perfect psychic hook and convincing him that he is about to catch an enormous prize, before his tracking ability races across the fortress in pursuit of the insect's master, and locks onto a bespectacled man surrounded by more of the same flying bugs. So Yu dives toward the seemingly weak target, planning to steal its memories and use them to locate Lin Yuan, only for his mind to collide with something so dark that the entire world vanishes around him, flooding Yu with psychic pollution and turning his confident search into a devastating backlash backlash, which sends the elite observer headfirst into the street with his brain completely destroyed, because the apparent controller was bait-guarded by a D-class soul howl, and Lin Yuan's counter-trap worked perfectly. With the only psychic observer removed, the bait's handler knows Lin Yuan's disguise, can now enter the cemetery undetected, and moments later a limousine delivers the false counselor Huang to the noble gathering, where Lin Yuan immediately copies the official's arrogant personality and complains that Wang Kai's father sent a brat to greet him, forcing the blonde squad member to apologize for the busy host and personally escort their honored guest inside, though the furious counselor ignores the banquet and demands to see the bride at once. Meanwhile, Lightning and his remaining teammates finally notice that Observer Yu has stopped reporting, so the commander orders one fighter to search for their missing scout and return immediately, only for the disguised Lin Yuan to intercept the blue-haired man outside and summon him over with chilling authority, leaving Freezer Han confused about why Counselor Huang suddenly wants him, before Lin Yuan orders him closer and claims to have a few urgent questions, then forbids the squad from leaving because their protection is now the Counselor's personal security guarantee. But Han and Barrier Master Yin insist the Ninth Abyss squad answers to itself and must confirm their teammates' safety, so Lin Yuan reminds them that independence would matter if they were awakened fighters, which none of them are yet, then threatens to freeze their Abyss permits, exploration funding, and even relocate their families into the slums, stunning the guests as Counselor Huang uses political power to suppress 5 ninth-tier ability users for his own convenience, until the furious Lightning steps forward and decides that arguing with this lunatic is not worth the risk, ordering his squad to remain at the cemetery and protect the counselor's life. Because survival comes first for Huang, even if humiliating a nearly awakened Lightning creates a terrifying future enemy. Elsewhere, Wang Kai's father dresses for the ceremony and warns Lin Ling to behave when the officiant arrives, while the bride agrees only if he honors his promise to release her brother and receives another threat should she resist. Principal Wang swears Lin Yuan will walk free once the wedding ends, secretly believing his steward is already bringing the prisoner over, when the disguised Counselor Huang bursts into the room and loudly assures Lin Ling that the principal will absolutely keep his word, then warns that any liar who breaks such a promise will not even rest peacefully in his grave, forcing the suddenly nervous Principal Wang to agree while Lin Ling studies their unexpected guest, before she asks the officiating counselor to personally ensure her brother's safe release after the ceremony, and Lin Yuan promises to send the entire Wang clan to hell if they fail, politely checking whether his disguise permits that guarantee, which Principal Wang accepts through gritted teeth while wondering why Huang is performing this role with so much enthusiasm. Lin Ling remains ready to pay any price as long as her brother survives, but behind the borrowed face, Lin Yuan silently promises his sister that she will pay nothing and will leave safely. With only 5 minutes before the ghost wedding begins, Principal Wang orders a maid to take the counselor to a private washroom, and the young servant An Qi obediently asks Lin Yuan to follow her, leading him away from the others and up the mansion staircase, before suddenly calling him by his real name and warning that a 6th-tier ability user will die if he stays inside this trap, surprising Lin Yuan because she pierced Shadow's disguise and even identified his hidden power level. Though An Qi admits she is only a level 3 psychic and returns to the far more urgent danger, since 5 9th-tier elites stand in plain sight while Principal Wang has hidden 100 more throughout the cemetery, forming an ambush force that would reduce Lin Yuan to cannon fodder if his identity were exposed. Yet our boy is less worried by the lineup than curious about why An Qi risked herself to warn him, and the maid answers that she came to repay a debt, because one of Lin Yuan's bone-faced monsters once saved her from Wang Kai, and she refuses to watch it walk into the Wang family's net. And she plans to warn her savior telepathically when it approaches and even sacrifice herself to open an escape route, leaving Lin Yuan amazed that she would go so far for a creature everyone else considers a monster. But An Qi calls it the beacon that rescued her from the abyss and angrily tells this mere 6th-tier stranger not to insult her faith, turning the intimidating counselor's disguise into the awkward target of one extremely devoted maid's lecture, before she grips his arm and urges Lin Yuan to flee while she creates a distraction, only for the approaching ceremony announcement to reveal they have already run out of time. The guests gather at the ballroom entrance and welcome Counselor Huang as the ghost wedding finally begins, so the disguised Lin Yuan steps forward as officiant and prepares to introduce the bride, until Freezer Han interrupts with an ice crystal and announces that the Ninth Abyss squad has discovered a cockroach among the guests, throwing the entire crowd into panic over how any intruder slipped through such overwhelming security, while Lin Yuan silently watches to learn whether his own disguise has been exposed. But Han instead accuses An Qi of using a false identity to infiltrate the mansion, prompting the doomed maid to contact Lin Yuan telepathically and count down while telling him to run, then unleash one final psychic burst to create the distraction she promised, except Lin Yuan uses that opening to charge Freezer Han instead of escaping, driving a brutal strike through the 9th-tier fighter before anyone can react. As the shocked An Qi asks why he threw away the life she tried to save, and Lightning finally sees through Shadow's trick, declaring their honored counselor a lowly imposter, before the blonde squad member demands to know why the stranger infiltrated the wedding, so Lin Yuan answers with the simplest possible objective: he came to leave no survivors. Lightning dismisses that threat because Lin Yuan is only a 6th-tier psychic and Enchi has already exhausted her power, but escape was never part of our boy's plan, and he fans out a hand of monster cards to begin the real battle, declaring game time as dozens of black cards launch across the ballroom. Though Lightning sees only a scattered control-type attack and mocks the pathetic display, while Barrier Master Yin's laughs that Freezer Han somehow died to an opponent, this ridiculous, until one returning card suddenly cuts across Yin's raised hand, and the blonde teammate realizes too late that Lin Yuan's cards can reverse direction from behind, letting one supersonic blade tear through the Barrier Master before he can defend himself, which instantly wipes the smiles from Lightning and the surviving Wang Yan, while An Qi senses Lin Yuan's psychic energy leap from Tier 6 all the way to peak Tier 9. The Cemetery Barrier may block summoned monsters, but it cannot stop Lin Yuan from equipping their cards directly, so an Abyss Silver Spider's mental bonus raises his psychic control by 100 points in a heartbeat, though Lightning still calls controllers fragile cheaters and prepares to reveal the true wrath of the Thunder God, as Enchi apologizes that her depleted power cannot interfere again or help Lin Yuan escape, before a colossal lightning field lifts her and the terrified guest helplessly into the air, trapping the entire ballroom inside Lightning's electromagnetic thunder field, while Lin Yuan recognizes the legendary Thunder Pressure Fist gathering at its center, and Lightning confirms the technique as he condemns the weak little ant before him, then dives forward with divine punishment concentrated around one murderous fist, only for that descending thunderbolt to collide with a massive dark silhouette waiting in its path. Lightning mistakes the obstacle for another psychic illusion and pours everything into his Ultra Thunder Pressure Fist, only to discover his attack has landed on the solid chest of a real bone-faced beast, which takes no damage at all and carries the terrifying strength of an awakened-level monster, because Lin Yuan already eliminated Barrier Master Yin, allowing his pets to enter the cemetery at last, and the giant creature catches Lightning between its hands before the fighter can retreat, while Lin Yuan describes the execution with all the ceremony it deserves, swatting a fly, as the bone-faced beast closes its grip around the once untouchable Thunder Prodigy, ending Lightning's legendary awakening prospects in one overwhelming burst, and leaving Wang Yan splattered with proof that Lin Yuan commands the monster responsible for Kai's death, screams that he has found his brother's killer, while Lin Yuan lifts the exhausted An Qi and asks what the family truly wanted from him, then announces that he came to conduct a ghost wedding of his own and reunite every Wang with the dead groom. Principal Wang finally faces the enemy he has been waiting to avenge his son upon, revealing himself above the ballroom as the surviving guests look toward their furious host, while Lin Yuan calmly asks whether the principal is really so eager to avenge Wang Kai, and the father declares his murderous son an innocent victim whose death demands justice, so Lin Yuan asks what justice remains for Kai's victims or for the living girl being forced into his grave, only to hear that commoners are ants beneath noble feet, and sacrificing Lin Ling is supposedly an act of mercy, before Principal Wang orders Yaner to begin the extermination and make sure Lin Yuan never leaves, prompting Wang Yan to mobilize the elite student council fighters gathered from every generation of Radiance Academy, as the extermination squad floods around the ceremony hall and seals every possible escape route. Lin Yuan welcomes the encirclement because a proper ghost wedding should send every guest to the underworld anyway, then releases a pair of grade D black and white Wuchang beasts whose evolution is still pending, leaving Wang Yan uneasy about the strange horned musicians appearing before the extermination squad, as the Wuchang soul summoners raise their instruments and channel a storm of spectral energy, which erupts from the cemetery hall in a massive pulse that spreads across the entire estate, launching screaming soul projectiles through the surrounding academy fighters, because these monsters lock onto souls with sonic attacks infamous for wiping out complete Abyss teams, so Wang Yan orders everyone to gather around 4 former student council presidents with half-awakened strength, starting with President Lin, whose protective ability covers anyone within 10 meters, followed by President Zhu, who refuses to shelter the weak but controls a 20-meter radius. President Twilight extends the safe zone to 30 meters and invites the survivors closer, while President Mo boasts of a 500-meter defense and promises his godfather that Lin Yuan's problem will disappear, then identifies the soul-locking beast's poor physical defense and leads the protected elites toward its weak point, with Zhu and Twilight eagerly joining what they expect to be a simple counterattack. Before they can reach the monster, white pieces begin drifting down like sudden snow, and one fighter mistakes the paper copper coins for harmless ghost wedding decorations, until touching one releases a violent poison that immediately drops him, followed by another burst among the confused squad, as the same hidden toxin spreads through fighters across the cemetery faster than their barriers can respond, because every paper coin is actually a spore released by Lin Yuan's Yin Corpse Mother Vine. Now the enormous vine has rooted itself throughout the cemetery while Lin Yuan calmly watches it consume the battlefield, declaring that a proper ghost wedding should bury every last guest along with the dead. President Mo recognizes the creature as a normally harmless grade E vine, but the corpses beneath the graves have already pushed it to grade C, and with the remains of so many powerful figures feeding its evolution, reaching its final form would leave no one alive. Still, Mo insists Lin Yuan's plan ends here, ordering the weaker fighters to avoid the ghost coins while the presidents rush the vine and cut it down. So Lin, Zhu, and Twilight acknowledge the command and launch their attack together, charging past the cemetery structures toward Lin Yuan and the towering monster behind him, only for a blizzard of poisonous spores to hammer their defensive barriers and halt the advance. Mo immediately orders everyone into the formation he prepared, certain they can force their way through, while Wang Yan watches from the hall and realizes Lin Yuan used the spores to split the 100-man force, leaving 4 guild leaders to face him alone. Even so, Wang Yan trusts President Mo, a ruthless genius the Wang family raised from the slums to guard their fortress. But the formation suddenly begins draining the other president's strength and transferring it into Mo, who reveals that his perfect record comes from predicting every battlefield shift and sacrificing anything necessary to win, even consuming the power of 3 fellow guild leaders to force a temporary awakening, just as he once burned the foster brother who raised him alive for daring to stand in his way. Confident in his stolen strength, Mo seals the entire area with spatial power and gives the vine 3 minutes before he destroys it, only for Lin Yuan to pierce the supposedly unbreakable barrier with a single concentrated strike, leaving the awakened guardian coughing blood as he realizes his spatial seal has somehow shattered. And the Yin Corpse Mother Vine has completed its evolution 3 full minutes ahead of schedule. Lin Yuan reveals the simple trick, a grade D Soul Curse card that increased the monster's evolution speed by 10%. The newly evolved vine immediately smashes Mo into the ground, making the Wang Patriarch cry out for his treasured foster son, then rage that Lin Yuan has now taken both Wang Kai and the heir he invested everything in. Lin Yuan coldly points out that Mo clearly mattered more to him than his biological child, because the Patriarch meant to make that slum-born genius the fortress president, only to waste his trump card on a doomed revenge mission. Unable to understand the disaster before him, the Patriarch demands to know who Lin Yuan is and why he hates the Wang family so deeply, just as Lin Yuan's disguise finally expires and exposes his real face, leaving the Patriarch stunned to see the prisoner Blackwater officially reported dead. Lin calmly admits he wrote that false death notice himself, then presents Mo's severed head as his ghost wedding gift, with the vine still controlling its newly claimed corpse as part of the celebration, while the Patriarch realizes Lin also eliminated the old butler he once called a brother. Wang Yan refuses to surrender and pours everything into a final charge, determined to drag Lin down with him, driving an awakened spatial strike directly into the vine's purple barrier, only to meet Mo himself, now transformed into one of the Yin Corpse Mother Vine's 7 corpse guards. Delighted to add spatial power to his collection, Lin orders the fallen foster son to escort the entire Wang family into the afterlife, but the desperate Patriarch tries one last threat by reminding him that Lin Ling remains their hostage. Lin answers with a single merciless command to kill, and Mo's corpse guard channels its former spatial ability through one outstretched hand, shattering the surrounding space and trapping Wang Yan beside the terrified Patriarch. While the strike passes harmlessly through the false Lin Ling they intended to use as leverage. Lin reveals that after killing the sealer, he replaced his sister with a shadow double, and now carries the real Lin Ling home before the fortress's agents can arrive. In the aftermath, frightened citizens flood the streets as a new cult claims humanity can survive the coming apocalypse only by worshipping monsters, using the cemetery massacre as proof that Fortress 54 can no longer protect its own people. Lin Yuan quietly observes the swelling movement from inside the crowd, wherein Chi enthusiastically promotes Bone-Faced Beast number 001 as a divine messenger that once saved her life, leaving Lin awkwardly reading her flyer and wondering whether she has taken her devotion far too seriously. And Chi recognizes him as a cemetery survivor and invites him to worship the 6-tier monster that supposedly rescued him as well, then demonstrates her faith by pledging her entire life to the unseen master behind the beast. Lin quickly excuses himself, warning her to preserve at least a little dignity because he has more urgent business, while Lin Chi promises to make the bone-faced beast famous worldwide and crown it the planet's one true god, leaving Lin to watch the enormous procession below and wonder how the world veered in such a bizarre direction. On a nearby rooftop, his new corpse guard reports back from the Justice Division and confirms nobody suspects its youngest deputy minister is dead, because Wang Mo used his official authority to erase every trace Lin left during the cemetery battle. He also reports that Huang Long inherited the entire Wang fortune, a fire awakener with countless disciples who officially counted Wang Yan among them, and is now pretending to avenge the family after devouring its assets, so Lin accepts the invitation to meet him. Wang Mo warns that Huang Long is dangerously powerful and advises avoiding a direct confrontation, but Lin already has a plan and orders the corpse guard to remain undercover inside the Justice Division, which Wang Mo accepts without hesitation, swearing that his stolen life now belongs completely to his master, before departing to await Lin's next command. Lin knows the ambitious corpse guard still dreams of controlling the fortress, but as one of 7 vine-bound cards, Wang Mo can only pursue the future his master permits, while Lin heads alone to meet Huang Long inside the Fire Dragon Ability Hall. Huang's uniformed disciples line the cavernous hall as Lin enters as his family's sole representative, calmly confirming his identity beneath the Fire Master's throne. Huang claims that inheriting the Wang estate as their mentor obligates him to settle their final grievance, then has his men throw a bundle of white mourning clothes at Lin's feet. He argues that since Lin Ling was meant to marry the Wang family's second son before the entire clan died, Lin's family of three must pay for the unknown killer, and orders them to wear the paper funeral garments, then complete a fatal charcoal ritual within 3 days to close the case. Lin simply asks what happens if he refuses, prompting Huang to boast that nobody in the fortress rejects an awakener without suffering a fate worse than death. Lin counters by displaying his pre-awakener registration and warns that attacking him before the official exam would bring the fortress's doomsday envoys down on Huang, stunning disciples who believed their target was merely an ordinary student. Though Huang praises the shield as clever before declaring he can still kill Lin and place the blame elsewhere, Lin calls that response short-sighted and asks why he would ever enter the enemy's hall alone, as Huang unleashes the overwhelming flames of a true awakener and declares every scheme meaningless before raw power. Yet Lin remains completely relaxed, reminding Huang that killing him was never an option, just as an unnatural chill begins smothering the Fire Master's blazing aura. Huang's disciples panic when the temperature plummets around them, and colossal walls of ice surge through the hall to trap every one of them in place. Huang realizes Lin brought an ice awakener whose glacier effect directly counters his flames, before a blue-haired swordswoman steps onto the frozen peak and greets her junior brother. The newcomer is Ning Xuan, Lin's senior sister, who casually asks whether he wants the old Fire Master eliminated, while Huang burns his own vital power to prove that even an elemental disadvantage cannot extinguish the fortress's strongest flame. Lin stops Ning Xuan from intervening, explaining that his promised duel with Huang can wait because the man still cannot touch him before the exam, and any forced attack would fail against her protection while also bringing execution for disrupting the grand trial. Huang questions whether an unawakened student is truly confident enough to pass, but Lin only notes that once the trial's protection ends, Huang can challenge him regardless of the result, then asks Ning Xuan to leave. She gives the frozen disciples 30 seconds before her extreme frost releases them, and warns Huang that if he harms her junior brother before the trial, she will answer by destroying every disciple he has. Outside, Ning Xuan pauses when Lin notices something caught in her blue hair, quietly allowing him to pluck it free despite her usual guarded nature. Blushing behind her blindfold, she warns him not to approach so suddenly again, or her sword reflex may answer first, then says goodbye and leaves him standing alone in the street. Lin understands that she returned from the Abyss front at his request, and silently vows to become strong enough to protect her in return, before a limousine pulls up beside him. Warden Bai Lin steps out and reports that the arrangement he ordered is finally complete, earning praise for finishing such a difficult assignment in only a few days. Bai admits she forced the crucial intermediary to sign by imprisoning his wife and children in Blackwater, and Lin approves the ruthless decisiveness that makes her perfectly suited to run his prison. With the next phase about to begin, Bai asks her master to return and supervise it personally, bringing Lin to Blackwater Prison's lavish underground auction hall as its guests assemble. Wealthy visitors compare the enormous fees and favors required to secure even a single entry ticket, eager to bid on rare apocalyptic relics extracted from death row inmates and major criminal groups. Some praise the new warden as an underworld business genius, though others consider her far beyond the reach of ordinary guests, unaware that Bai Lin is inside the VIP room kneeling before her master with the completed catalog. Lin approves the collection of prison treasures and contraband she persuaded 7 major organizations to add, since the auction must raise enough money to contain an S-class metallic mimic beast, though he also wants one particular treasure for himself. Bai warns that item will draw fierce competition and offers to simply eliminate the shadow thieves who own it, but Lin rejects such a noisy shortcut and chooses to enter the bidding as an ordinary competitor. Bai then takes the stage and welcomes the honored guests to Blackwater Prison's lawless marketplace, promising a feast of end-of-the-world treasures capable of satisfying any desire. The audience briefly notices her reddened knees, but dismisses the idea that their untouchable warden could have been kneeling before anyone, before Bai introduces the first mysterious lot and hands the presentation to the host. The cloth falls away to reveal an elderly prisoner restrained in a wheelchair, leaving the confused crowd wondering why Blackwater would open its grand auction with an old man. The host identifies him as Dr. Mark, a death row inmate scheduled for execution at dawn, whose horrifying crimes disgust the guests until they remember he is also an elite surgeon who has never lost a patient. Buyers desperate for heart and spinal operations immediately throw out offers of 2 and 3 million, only for the host to announce that bidding actually begins at 50 million. The outrageous figure silences every eager voice in the hall, as the crowd recoils from paying such a fortune for even the world's most reliable surgeon. Quoda, patriarch of one of the fortress's 10 great families, breaks the silence with 50 million because only Dr. Mark can repair his son's abyss injuries, only for medical CEO Xu Bing to offer 55 million and secure the surgeon for her entire hospital group. The hall erupts into an escalating frenzy of 56, 58, and 60 million bids, until Huoda raises the price to 80 million and begs everyone to let him save his beloved son. Xu Bing refuses, claiming her need to preserve countless lives outweighs one father's grief, and counters with 85 million, driving Huoda to slam down his cane and double the bid to 170 million rather than lose his son's only hope. The stunned guests realize Blackwater has earned nearly 200 million from a prisoner who cost the auction nothing, and the host awards Dr. Mark to the Huo patriarch with a warning that the unstable surgeon must be handled carefully. The auction immediately continues with a freshly preserved ice-enhanced heart capable of granting Tier 3 abilities after transplantation, followed by a hypnotist sentenced to 3 years of service for treating the wealthy's insomnia, and an A-grade prisoner's private cliffside hotel equipped as a luxury doomsday shelter. Since each new lot starts at 1 million, bids for all three explode across the hall at once, pushing Blackwater rapidly toward the 300 million deposit required for the S-class metallic mimic beast and proving Bai Lin's commercial instincts. Flattered by her master's approval, Bai eagerly offers him any additional reward he desires, which draws an immediate wave of jealous hostility from the Spider-Woman lurking above them. Bai reminds the possessive monster that every servant belongs to the same master and none of them can keep him for herself. But Lin ends their bickering and returns attention to the auction strategy. Just as he predicted, the Huo family has drained most of the money meant to support Huang Long's Fire Dragon Hall, and by seizing the infamous surgeon, they have also angered every rival bidder while accepting the future trouble Lin planted in Dr. Mark. Since backing Huang already sealed their fate, Lin calmly asks which upcoming lot contains the material needed to evolve his abyssal silver spider. The answer arrives as the Blood Arhat statue, a masterpiece from the Hidden Thieves that floods everything within 300 meters with cultivation energy, begins at 50 million with the added promise that its bloodroot power can trigger certain monsters' evolution. Zhao Yuan, the Thunder Hall's ninth awakened disciple, decides the statue will make the perfect proposal gift for Ning Xuan, because his wealthy Zhao family already has a marriage agreement with the Nings and expects this treasure to overcome her resistance. He also plans to hand Lin Yuan over to Huang Long and settle the conflict that his intended bride began for the supposedly weak student, unaware that Lin has been waiting for him to enter this carefully prepared game. 6 months earlier at West Abyss Plaza, the Thunder Hall's trial team waited beneath a smoke-filled sky, with hundreds of low-ranking disciples forced to kneel until their ninth senior brother arrived. After hours on the ground, they quietly wondered whether Zhao Yuan was humiliating them on purpose, remembering him as an arrogant noble prodigy who delighted in tormenting anyone beneath his status. Zhao finally descended from the cliffs through a cloud of dust, casually apologizing for oversleeping while the terrified trainees warned one another not to speak around him. He blamed his delay on last night's overly enthusiastic companions, though everyone knew people who resisted him rarely survived, then mocked the kneeling recruits for resenting a noble awakener whom he considered a god among mortals. Zhao declared the low-born candidates mere expendable bodies for the Abyss trial, unworthy even of anger toward him, and made clear that Ning Xuan would also attend the trial as his possession. He ordered every worthless competitor to stay away from her and erase any thought of winning her attention, demonstrating the threat with a devastating thunderstrike that swallowed the gathered trainees, leaving the plaza cratered and most of the team scattered across the ruins, as Zhao warned that anyone competing with him for anything would meet the same fate. Back in the auction hall, the Blood Arhat statue takes center stage before the fortress's richest buyers, while Zhao privately boasts that ordinary nobodies will never even reach the level where they could oppose him. A rehabilitation center opens at 65 million, and museum curator Liang Jin raises the offer to 70 million for his private collection, until Zhao dismisses them both with an immediate bid of 100 million. The audience marvels as the Zhao heir pushes a third lot past that enormous threshold, but Xu Bing enters at 110 million because her medical group needs the statue's energy, and Liang Jin stubbornly answers with 120 million. Zhao leaps straight to 200 million, threatening to destroy Liang's hidden assassin base and reminding Xu that her entire budget is only 190, leaving both rival bidders speechless before his wealth and intimidation. Certain the statue is his, Zhao repeats that no one in the fortress can take away anything he wants. As the host prepares to close the lot, even the audience accepts that no one can defeat this arrogant noble, but Bai announces that an anonymous bidder from the VIP room is entered at the final moment, offering 201 million for the statue. Irritated by the challenge, Zhao raises his bid to 220 million, only for the hidden competitor to answer with 221. Zhao accuses the VIP of deliberately mocking him with 1 million increases and demands the organizers intervene. But Bai explains that the raise meets the auction minimum and allows the contest to continue. Furious, Zhao jumps all the way to 250 million, yet every large increase is immediately answered by 1 million until the anonymous total reaches 301, forcing Zhao to ask who dares interfere with the alliance between his family and Ning Xuan's marriage. Lin answers that Zhao has no standing to demand respect from an anonymous bidder, then bluntly tells the arrogant young master to get lost. Enraged by the insult, Zhao releases his awakened aura and threatens the VIP with the consequences of offending him, only for Blackwater guards to surround his booth with radiation weapons before he can act. Bai reminds him that the prison enforces its own rules, where even awakened fighters can be suppressed and troublemakers lose their bidding rights, so Zhao swallows his rage and drives the price up to 500 million instead. Watching from behind the VIP screen, Lin quietly declares that his trap for senior brother Zhao has finally begun to close, while the hall erupts over a sum that is enormous even for the wealthy Zhao family. Liang Jin assumes the spoiled heir has reached his absolute limit and believes no one will dare challenge him now. And Zhao smugly tells the hidden bidder that a weakling like him is not even qualified to sit at the same table, until Lin instantly shatters that confidence with an offer of 800 million. The staggering number remains on the display as Lin calmly confirms his bid without the slightest hesitation, leaving the crowd to wonder whether the mysterious VIP is even crazier than Zhao and what could make the statue so valuable. Lin throws Zhao's own contempt back at him and orders the weakling to leave the table, making the humiliated young master curse him through clenched teeth. Though all his awakened fury cannot solve the sudden shortage of money. At that vulnerable moment, the blonde and bespectacled Wei Xing approaches with an offer to finance Zhao's next move, revealing himself as the auction's ever-changing middleman, a lender trusted by the 10 largest underground organizations to arrange virtually any sum. Zhao immediately recognizes a loan shark exploiting his desperation and demands to know what the stranger truly wants, so Wei Xing names his commission, exposes Zhao's 600 million cash limit, and offers a billion-dollar loan secured by 2 family mines. Knowing the Zhao clan cannot afford to lose either Ning Xuan's alliance or the blood are hot. As the auctioneer calls Lin's 800 million offer for the second time, Wei Xing places the contract before Zhao and promises to transfer the borrowed funds the moment he signs. A fresh taunt from the VIP vows to take both the blood are hot and Ning Xuan, crushing Zhao's last bit of restraint, so he signs away the mines while privately promising to kill the man behind the screen. Wei Xing then reveals that intelligence places the VIP's usable wealth below 1.2 billion and urges Zhao to end the contest with one decisive strike, convincing the furious heir to bid exactly 1.2 billion. The audience explodes at the Zhao family's apparent wealth, but Lin answers from the shadows with a calm bid of 1.6 billion, and the impossible new total flashes across the VIP display for everyone to see. Zhao and the entire hall freeze in disbelief as the trap tightens around him, while Wei Xing smoothly produces another billion-dollar contract that requires Zhao's remaining 6 mines as collateral. Zhao protests that the VIP was supposed to be unable to exceed 1.2 billion, but Wei Xing claims their calculations missed a hidden reserve and advises him to leap straight to 2 billion, promising both loan contracts can be voided once he wins. With pride overwhelming every warning, Zhao signs again and commits 2 billion to the statue, leaving the VIP booth ominously silent as the bidding finally stops. Spectators call the price insane and marvel that the Zhao family would sacrifice so much for a marriage alliance, while Zhao celebrates as if his victory proves no one in the fortress can ever compete with him. The auctioneer formally awards him the blood are hot, and Wei Xing congratulates his new debtor before warning that missed interest or damaged collateral would turn every major dark organization in the fortress against him. Zhao dismisses the possibility of default, convinced that marrying into the Ning family will make him the unquestioned god of Fortress 54. Back in the VIP room, Lin explains that the damaged blood are hot can be resized and that he secretly removed every ingredient his spider needs before the auction, while a death row disciple also corrupted its internal array, so the Ning cultivators will descend into madness and destroy their alliance with Zhao once they receive it. Wei Xing confirms that Zhao has signed every contract and mortgaged all 8 mining rights to the fortress's largest criminal organizations, and once news spreads that shadow creatures have rendered those mines unusable, the lenders will demand repayment and drag the entire Zhao family into chaos. Impressed by the layered scheme, Bai asks what her master intends to do next, but Lin says the seeds only need time to bloom, because Zhao Yuan is merely bait for the true enemy, the fire dragon, and the awakened trial begins in 3 days. One day before that trial, morning breaks over Lin Yuan's modest neighborhood, where he jolts awake after sleeping far later than intended. His father storms in with a spatula, calls him lazy, and compares him unfavorably to his gifted sister, just as the young woman cheerfully says good morning and asks Lin to buy breakfast because their father burned it again. She heads out after announcing that her pharmacist license has finally arrived and that she must report to the association, giving their father another reason to praise his future high-earning daughter while predicting that Lin will remain a useless freeloader. Lin casually tells the hardworking man to keep at his own manual labor job and slips downstairs to eat. Though his father's harsh act softens when he gives the boy 200 yuan, admits Lin bravely carried his sister from the cemetery disaster and warns him to avoid danger while he is still weak. Lin accepts the money with an easy promise and hurries out before the breakfast stall closes, leaving his anxious father shouting after him to run the moment anything feels wrong in this dangerous world. Lin privately complains that such an overprotective parent can be exhausting, then reaches the familiar neighborhood stall where the owner already knows his usual order. He happily requests a meat bun, fried dough sticks, and soy milk, and the kindly vendor packs everything while adding yet another warning that an honest young man like him must watch out for trouble. The neighboring shopkeepers agree that Xiaoyuan is the most polite and dependable boy on their street, teasing him about marriage before reminding him to help his sister shop when he returns from school, even as they sadly blame his lifelong bullies for making him so timid. Lin promises the aunties and uncles that he will come back to lend a hand, leaving the vendor to lament that a good kid like him still sits at the bottom of this brutal world's food chain. Moments after Lin walks away, a convoy of expensive cars screeches into the narrow street, and Scarface Biao Jie emerges with a gang of enforcers to announce his return from Blackwater Prison. The shopkeepers panic because the greedy thug can only be appeased with money, and he immediately claims worsening public safety requires tripling their monthly protection fee. The breakfast vendor begs him to reconsider because the neighborhood's small businesses can barely afford the current payment, while everyone else pleads that such an increase will force them to close. Biaoja coldly demands an entire year's fee in advance and asks who protects him in this post-apocalyptic world, then threatens to demolish every shop, beat the occupants, and burn the whole street if they refuse. His eager followers move in at once, forcing the terrified vendor to stand between them and his neighbors while begging for mercy. Just then, Lin strolls back into view, catching Biaoge's attention after realizing he left the stall too quickly because our seemingly absent-minded boy only returned to pay for breakfast. The scarred boss reacts with sudden alarm the moment he recognizes Xiao Yuan, but the vendor desperately tells Lin to leave and insists the honest student has nothing to do with their dispute. One of Biaoje's men instead mistakes Lin for another easy victim and demands his own protection payment, prompting the terrified boss to smash that fool into the pavement for threatening someone he clearly knows should never be touched. Biaoje and every remaining gangster immediately drop to the ground before Lin, leaving our boy to innocently ask what is happening. The ex-convict calls him boss, apologizes for trespassing on his territory, and declares himself worthy of death for offending Lin's friends, stunning the neighbors who suddenly realize they're supposedly helpless. Xiao Yuan commands a feared underworld figure. Lin can only despair that one excessive display of loyalty has destroyed the harmless persona he worked so hard to build. The story briefly rewinds to the beginning of that same day before the awakened exam, returning to the moment Lin first sits up in bed as his father bursts in, complains about the late hour, and once again compares him to his outstanding sister. Lin greets her while she sends him downstairs to replace their father's ruined breakfast, then watches her leave for the Pharmacists Association with her newly issued license. Their father contrasts her bright career and 10,000 yuan salary with the useless future he predicts for his son, so Lin deflects the lecture with a joke about the man's own laboring job and heads for food. The gruff parent stops him with 200 yuan, praises his courage during the cemetery attack, and warns that bravery will not compensate for weakness next time, while Lin waves off the concern and rushes toward the closing breakfast stall. His father continues shouting that a naive and honest boy should flee from the slightest sign of danger, making Lin sigh once more over the burden of being so thoroughly protected. The replay follows him to the familiar vendor who recognizes little Juan on sight, where he orders his usual meat bun, fried dough sticks, and soy milk with a cheerful smile. The vendor hands over the meal and cautions him against thieves in a world growing more dangerous by the day, while a neighboring aunt praises the timid but reliable young man she has watched grow up and even jokes about marrying her daughter to him. The rewind continues as the neighbors tease little Yuan about his future and explain that childhood bullying is why he pretends to be so meek, while Lin promises to return from school and help his sister's business. The breakfast vendor again mourns that kind-hearted children remain the lowest rung of the food chain, just before Biaoje's convoy tears into the street. His lackey announces that their boss has returned from Blackwater Prison, causing the residents to panic at the prospect of paying for safety once more. Biaoje claims the worsening chaos requires a threefold rise in protection fees, and the vendor nervously explains that the small shops are already stretched to the limit. The whole street begs him not to force them out of business, but he demands a full year of payments immediately and refuses to care whether they survive. Backed by his gang, Biaoga threatens to wreck and burn the shops if anyone resists, while his grinning followers prepare to carry out the order. The vendor can only plead for mercy when Lin walks back into the street and catches the gangster's eye. He explains with an embarrassed smile that he merely forgot to pay for his breakfast, yet Biaoga goes rigid the instant he recognizes him. The neighbors urgently tell Lin to leave before the gang can trouble him, but one ignorant thug sneers that even the boy must pay protection money. Biaoge violently disciplines the man for that suicidal mistake, and the entire gang drops to its knees again before the supposedly ordinary student. Lin once more asks why the gang is kneeling in front of him, and Biaoge begs forgiveness, calling the street Lin's territory and saying he deserves punishment for offending the boss's friends. The stunned neighbors finally understand that their quiet local boy is the master of a feared underworld leader, while Lin mourns the complete collapse of his carefully maintained ordinary image. The scene shifts to the awakened exam, where a fellow disciple wakes Lin Yuan and warns that their senior sister is furious. But Lin explains he only overslept after helping Sister Lu at her shop and agrees to join the others. On the way, he learns that their senior sister deliberately postponed her own advancement so she could lead their Thunderclap Hall juniors through the exam and compete for another Awakening Stone. Their group reaches the vast fortified entrance to Abyss Number 9, where a pink-haired woman scolds the late arrivals for failing the basic rule of assembling before their superiors. Senior sister Mu Rongyin warns that treating the Abyss exam carelessly will get people killed, adding that weak candidates who lacked real strength had to sell their bodies for even this chance and should value their lives accordingly. Lin quietly takes his place among the uniformed Thunderclap Hall disciples until Mu Rongyin marches straight toward him. She accuses him of deceiving martial arts-obsessed senior sister Ning through dubious connections and warns that charm will not keep him alive in the abyss. But Lin answers with a polite smile that he can take care of himself. Despite her harsh words, Mu Rongyin gives him an emergency beacon and promises to come if he is trapped, admitting that senior sister Ning would grieve if anything happened to him before ordering the group forward. A suited inspection team arrives and requests everyone's cooperation for a routine check, prompting the candidates to recognize Minister Wang Mo of the Ministry of Justice, a record-breaking non-awakened official who has now awakened and ranks among his generation's top 3 talents. Wang's staff begins recording the candidates' information on their inspection tablets. Mu Rongyin resumes mocking Lin as dust beside the blazing talents of his age, though she privately wonders why a man of Wang Mo's stature would oversee ordinary exam security. The inspectors ask Mu Rongyin to produce her physical abyss access pass, and she realizes too late that she left it behind, offering only a digital exam pass after wasting time in the bathroom. Her juniors panic because the rules demand both certificates, and her disqualification would end Thunderclap Hall's entire attempt, while Mu Rongyin begs to be admitted so she will not face severe punishment from their master. The inspector remains unmoved and orders her to leave immediately until Lin unexpectedly asks for an exception on her behalf. Mu Rongyin snaps that pleading cannot change a rule unless Lin is some kind of god, but the inspector instantly grants permission for the entire group to enter the abyss. Shocked, Mu Rongyin realizes that Lin's casual request actually worked. Lin scratches his head and calls their admission lucky, leaving Mu Rongyin speechless, while the inspector bows apologetically and urges them to stay safe in the dangerous abyss. The juniors marvel that the famously arrogant Wang Mo personally bowed to their group, unaware of the reason behind the extraordinary favor. Mu Rongyin loses her footing in the confusion, but Lin catches her before she hits the floor. Flustered, she pulls away, insists that she is not fooled by his niceness, and refuses to thank him, then marches through the entrance with the other Thunderclap Hall disciples following behind. As they descend, the group learns that Abyss number 9 is so deep that the elevator ride alone takes 3 hours, and most information is classified until arrival, carrying them farther down through the seemingly endless shaft. At last, the lift announces that they have reached their destination. After a descent that feels endless to the exhausted juniors, they finally step out of the elevator, and Mu Rongyin complains about the freezing alien atmosphere, while saying in a sleep Lin would be less trouble if the elevator simply carried him back up. Lin wakes exactly on arrival and cheerfully announces that his nap ended at the perfect time. Mu Rongyin orders him to stay within 300 meters of her, warning that even a small mistake in the abyss means total ruin, as the broadcast declares the awakened exam officially underway and labels the first phase a survival game. Candidates are told they must remain alive for 48 hours to reach round 2, and learn that the starting plaza barrier will fall in 10 minutes, withdrawing all security and allowing monsters to flood in. The rules divide Abyss number 9 into 7 colored zones whose hourly survival points rise sharply from gray through black, with a leaderboard rewarding the top 100 and remarkable prizes awaiting the top 10. The disciples marvel that a stabilization gem and half-step awakening stone can push a 9th rank awakening chance beyond 90%, while rare A-rank serums are also on offer, making Lin decide that 5 serums could lift him from rank 6 to rank 9, so he must fight his way into the top 10. The Thunderclap disciples ask Mu Rongyin which zone they should occupy, and she decisively selects the lucrative yellow zone before the barrier drops and the first monster wave begins. Her juniors protest that without her, they might not survive an hour in a zone that dangerous, but Mu Rongyin promises to protect the group and orders everyone, especially Lin, to remain directly behind her. Lin agrees with his usual innocent smile as a paid guide gathers clients for the safer blue zone, promising to avoid monster swarms and deeper abyss levels for 1 million each. A disciple argues that the blue zone borders yellow and traveling with a large group would be safer at the start, so Mu Rongyin agrees to split from the crowd once they reach blue. An hour later, their enormous guided group crosses the black sand toward the blue zone without meeting a single monster, leading some candidates to conclude that the abyss's fearsome reputation was exaggerated and their guide fee was well spent. The guide smugly takes credit for steering them around every dangerous route and calls the million a bargain, while Mu Rongyin sharply reminds Lin that he is freeloading on her protection. The guide notices how closely the pair have stayed together, and jokes that Lin is practically Mu Rongyin's private possession, making her flusteredly insist she is only guarding a weak junior. He continues teasing that close-range protection reveals Lin must have something special, while other candidates openly speculate that the gifted Mu Ronggin has found herself a pretty new toy and offer to protect Lin instead. The guide brings everyone back to business, warning that they will enter the blue zone in about 20 minutes and that he cannot guarantee safety beyond that point. But his warning comes too late as a sudden unseen strike cuts through a nearby candidate. The crowd freezes at the brutal result, and a scythe-tailed, skeletal monster emerges from the darkness carrying the victim away. The panicked guide identifies it as a headhunter, an armored monster that collects human trophies, ignores blades and bullets, and spells death once it locks onto prey, as the creature shifts its attention to a nearby woman. Terror leaves her unable to move, and the other candidates realize they are too far away to save her. While the headhunter's scythe tail lashes toward her at lethal speed, she can only stare as the strike closes in, until a glowing card slices through the attacking tail instead. The shocked survivors realize someone has saved her, and Lin steps forward with his hand extended, revealing himself as the rescuer. The crowd cannot believe the pretty boy severed a headhunter's alloy-hard body with an ordinary playing card, leaving Mu Rongyan to stare at Lin Yuan in stunned disbelief. The wounded headhunter shrieks as its severed tail confirms Lin's attack was no accident, and Lin coolly warns it that losing the tail will be only the beginning if it cannot tell when to advance or retreat. The rescued woman calls him a little hero and apologizes for judging him, while the others realize he threw nearly 100 cards at once and somehow struck the monster's only weak point in motion. Some skeptics still call him merely lucky, but the woman insists on accompanying him once to repay the favor, as Lin calmly notes that luck is part of strength and asks whether anyone else has noticed the changing landscape. The group looks up to see dark silhouettes gathering along the cliffs, and panic spreads at their growing number. From above, a vast horde closes around the candidates, forcing Mu Rongyan to recognize a catastrophic hunting swarm even though they are still in the supposedly safer green zone. The terrified candidates realize the monster horde ignores human zone boundaries, which means there is nowhere safe to hide, so Lin Yuan says their only chance is to break through before tens of thousands of headhunters complete the encirclement. Mu Rongyan answers by ordering every Thunderclap Hall disciple to stay behind her as she opens a path with her great blade, and the students charge after her with everything they have. Her first sweeping strike tears a bright route through the advancing monsters, allowing her to cut down a headhunter in a single decisive blow. The survivors hail Mu Rongyan's strength and rush through the opening she created, fighting and fleeing together while enemies flood in from every side. With the edge of the swarm finally near, Mu Rongyan urges everyone to hold on and asks after Lin Yuan, only for the group to realize he has vanished from their formation. Furious and worried, Mu Rongyan demands to know how they lost him when he had been in their very center, while someone fears an invisible mutated headhunter may have carried junior brother Lin away. They explain that such a savage variant appears only among enormous hordes, making his situation sound hopeless, but far from the fleeing group, Lin Yuan is already confronting the hidden creature on a lonely cliff. He tells the unseen headhunter that its invisibility cannot hide the injury left by his card, forcing the wounded mutant to reveal itself and lash out with its scythe-like tail. Lin refuses to let it stall for reinforcements, declaring that he will capture the swift, invisible assassin for his own monster army, and the enraged creature screams back at him. Lin simply invites it to try striking him, as the mutant launches itself forward in a vicious counterattack. The invisible headhunter springs at Lin Yuan with its tail poised to strike, but Lin answers with a flash of purple psychic power. His cards bind the mutant in place before its attack can land, and the creature is dragged helplessly into the capture field. Lin reveals that he has equipped his evolved Abyss Silver Spider card, pushing his psychic strength to the awakening level, though its unstable evolution limits him to 2 uses in 72 hours. With that power, he completes the capture without effort, then immediately calls the job done and decides to leave before the main horde reaches him. As Lin moves off, he notices an approaching presence and quickly conceals himself behind the rocks. A team from Black Gold, one of the Rank 1 halls, arrives searching for the mutated monster they deliberately drew out by suppressing their power and triggering the stampede. Lin recognizes that Black Gold follows the elite dark path, making the arrival of all 5 top awakened fighters far more serious, especially when their leader says capturing the mutant decides the entire force's future and that contestant lives are expendable. He orders an exhaustive search, even telling them to dig several feet into the ground if necessary, so Lin realizes he cannot remain hidden for long. The Black Gold fighters split up and scour the rocky forest, leaving Lin briefly safe, but wondering why this mutated monster matters so much to them. His reprieve ends when one of them taunts him from nearby, and the 5 hunters surround him with open contempt. Their leader explains that his holographic scanning ability spotted Lin hiding, while the others dismiss him as a worthless witness and prepare to silence him. Lin protests that they have decided his fate without even asking him, but the Black Gold hunters coldly insist that weakness earns no say in this world. He turns their arrogance back on them and tells the scanner to check his power level, shocking the group when it reads at the awakening level, despite Lin not having shown that strength moments ago. Lin explains that equipping his spider card takes less than a second and gives them 10 seconds to attack if they want a chance, but the hunters realize their own seals cannot be undone in time and rush him together instead. Lin offers to help them break those seals, then activates the effect across all of them at once. His psychic power violently shatters their restraints and overwhelms the squad, leaving their leader frozen in disbelief. Lin casually remarks that he used too much energy and may have damaged more than the seals, then tells the surviving leader to answer questions if he wants to live. The proud awakened fighter refuses to submit and dives drives toward Lin to settle the score, only to find his movement inexplicably slowed. Lin reveals he placed a slowing seal on them while undoing their restraints, and sends his newly captured invisible headhunter to finish the attack. The Black Gold leader finally realizes the creature attacking him is the very mutant they were hunting, while Lin dryly congratulates them on finding it. The mutant strikes with overwhelming speed, sending the leader crashing away, and Lin says he will eventually uncover the headhunter's secret before feeding the intruders to his Corpsevine matriarch's evolution. The matriarch descends to absorb the fallen hunters, turning their defeat into nourishment for its growth. Lin notes that the fresh awakened corpses should let the Corpsevine matriarch evolve again before the exam ends, then heads back toward his team. Murongyin finds him near the monster tide and angrily orders him never to stray more than 100 meters away again, so Lin pretends he collapsed from low blood sugar and thanks her for not abandoning him. She carries him while racing the group away from the danger, prompting the other candidates to complain that they are fleeing a catastrophe while those two appear to be flirting. Murongyin keeps speeding forward with Lin in her arms, until he claims he has recovered enough to walk on his own. Before she can put him down, Murongyin senses something following them, and a spreading purple-black haze rolls in behind the fleeing students. She recognizes it not as a monster, but as one of the Abyss's confusing environmental disasters, ordering everyone to stay alert, speed up, and escape the area. Lin realizes the real disaster is only beginning, as dark energy surges beneath the entire group. The students find themselves engulfed by the sinister phenomenon and despair at being trapped again, but Lin decides it is time to act. Before he can move, several powerful figures arrive through the haze, led by Murong Yuan, Black Gold Hall's chief disciple, who scolds Xiao Yin for panicking. The candidates recognize Murong Yuan as Murong Yin's cousin, and feel relief at the arrival of a fighter whose suppressed strength is already monstrous, especially because he carries the honored Abyss Guardian lamp, an artifact no other Black Gold Awakened has received. Murongyan turns to her cousin and demands to know why he is here. Murong Yuan says Black Gold entered Abyss number 9 to retrieve something, but the anomaly disaster means the Abyss is contaminated and she should join them. Murongyan refuses to abandon her junior brothers, which makes Murong Yuan notice that she is risking herself for Lin Yuan. He decides to remove the boy immediately, but Lin only stares back in unimpressed silence. Murongyan steps in front of him, declaring that anyone who wants to harm her junior brother must get through her first. Murong Yuan reminds her of her inferior place in the Murong family and demands that she obey, while the other candidates explain that every younger descendant is treated as the patriarch's heir's property. Even so, Murongyan steels herself to protect Lin and says she will accept any punishment after leaving the Abyss, only for a Black Gold woman to sneer that Miss Yin is merely their young master's possession and has no right to defy him. Murong Yuan promises to enforce the family punishment immediately, beginning with a humiliating order, but something suddenly interrupts him. A terrified scream echoes through the anomaly and throws the Black Gold group off balance, as Murong Yuan demands that the hidden threat reveal itself. Lin's invisible headhunter appears within the disaster zone beside the Abyss Guardian lamp, stunning the students because a monster should not be able to move inside the anomaly, especially one matching the legendary invisible headhunter. Murong Yuan decides one life is a worthwhile price if it forces the elusive target to appear, but Lin immediately orders a retreat. The mutant darts away with the lamp as the trap collapses, leaving Murong Yuan to postpone punishing Xiao Yin while he chases after it. Watching the monster escape, Lin wonders why it alone can move through the disaster and why Black Gold wants it so desperately. The anomaly then begins to fade, and the relieved candidates believe they have been saved. Their wrist displays announce the first survival ranking list, where the group has reached the top 500, though Thunderclap Hall's best result is only Murongyan at rank 439, leaving them far from the top 300 they had hoped for. They see that Murongyuan sits at rank 3 behind 2 Limitless Hall candidates, proving that Black Gold truly belongs among the elite. Lin checks on Murongyan after her confrontation with her cousin, but she brushes aside his concern and calls it fake. She admits through tears that her fate was sealed from the beginning, no matter how hard she proved herself in Thunderclap Hall, so Lin asks whether things would be different if her cousin died in an accident. As the invisible headhunter races across the ruined landscape, the implication of Lin's question hangs in the air. Lin lets the thought settle as the group moves on through the unstable abyss, while the shaken candidates try to understand the danger they have just escaped, and Murongyan silently weighs the impossible choice forced on her by her family, as Lin keeps his real plan hidden behind his usual calm expression. Because the next stage of the exam leaves no room for anyone to lower their guard, so the team regroups and follows the safest route they can find. But the changing terrain makes it clear that the abyss is still watching them, forcing every candidate to stay close and conserve what strength remains, while Lin quietly assesses which threats could become useful to his growing monster army. This anomaly finally dissipates into nothingness, leaving the monster to watch from the ridge. And Lin wonders if it is just hunting for points, but his focus shifts when he mutters that he will not let it get away, which immediately catches Murongyan's attention as she demands to know why he is so obsessed with stopping its escape, so Lin quickly plays it off as a slip of the tongue and urges the group to keep moving before the area gets any worse. Just as a swarm of shadowbirds descends from the sky to surround the candidates, turning their path into a gauntlet. This This team is barely holding on in the yellow zone, and the casualty count is already hitting half the junior brothers. They are banking on the next ranking update in 3 minutes to finally get them out of this death trap. Trash talk about Lin Yuan starts up, with the group betting he is already dead after chickening out of the red zone. This system notification pings with the new rankings, and the group scrambles to check their standing. Chen hits rank 300 and starts gloating, fully convinced that Lin Yuan is regretting his decision to leave the team. This group celebrates the senior sister hitting the top 50, but the mood shifts when they notice Morong Yuan plummeted from 3rd to 17th place. Morong Yuan is actually fighting for his life against a relentless swarm of monsters, and he has no idea why he is being singled out. This other candidates try to rationalize his drop as still being elite, claiming that anyone in the top 20 is a standout. Then they point to the updated leaderboard where Lin Yuan has surged into the top 10, and the entire group goes silent in disbelief as they realize their earlier trash talk about him was completely wrong. This group is spiraling because the rankings confirm Lin Yuan actually entered the black zone, and they are straight up refusing to believe it, insisting he couldn't even handle the blue zone, let alone survive the black. But the leaderboard doesn't lie, with Lin Yuan sitting at rank 9, while Morong Yuan is still out there grinding for his own spot. And Morong Yuan is already fuming that some guy he considers a pretty boy is suddenly outranking him. While the observers back at the dojo realize Lin Yuan has no contract, turning him into the hottest free agent on the market. Ye Wuji from the Infinite Dojo is already moving to lock down Lin Yuan with an A-level contract. He Ao of the Thunder Dojo immediately throws a fit, claiming the kid is his disciple and shouldn't be poached. Xingyun from the Jushu Dojo seems more interested in the guy's looks than the actual bidding war. Silence is the only response from Bing Zhu of the Penglai Dojo, who prefers to watch the others bicker, and Yu Wuji finally shuts down the protest by pointing out that if Thunder Dojo actually cared, they would have secured him with a binding slot before the trial even started. Ao tries to save face by claiming he has always valued Lin Yuan highly, but Xingyun ignores the posturing and drops an A-plus contract offer just because she likes his face, which sends the room into a frenzy since an A-plus deal from a Supreme Dojo is basically a golden ticket, and Yue Wuji immediately matches the offer to ensure Infinite Dojo does not lose out on the talent, leaving Hiao to scramble and insist that Lin Yuan is still technically his own disciple. Lin Yuan is holding his own in the black zone, but he is already planning his exit strategy once he hits his point quota. His inbox is blowing up with contract offers from every major dojo in the region, and he is barely processing the spam when a random friend request pops up on his screen. This girl he saved earlier is reaching out from the yellow zone, offering to team up since she already has a high-end bodyguard on her payroll. Lin Yuan realizes she is the heiress to the massive Wenjin Empire, making her offer to look after him a whole lot more interesting. This heiress is acting like a total brat, demanding Lin Yuan drop everything and rush to her location in the red zone, but Lin Yuan checks the map and realizes she's actually in the yellow zone, calling her out for the obvious lie, and she just laughs it off, admitting she was trying to bait him into coming over. Before the conversation ends, her bodyguard leads the way through the dangerous terrain, but monsters suddenly ambush the group, forcing the bodyguard to scream for her to run as he gets mauled. This bodyguard is getting absolutely shredded by the monsters, leaving the Wen heiress to watch the carnage unfold, and realizing the situation is completely hopeless. She screams for Lin Yuan to stay away, but he is already closing the distance at high speed, telling her the warning is way too late. Lin Yuan unleashes a massive burst of energy to tear through the ambush, and the heiress can only stare in disbelief as he crashes into the fight to save her. Lin Yuan stands his ground as the monsters swarm him, and he channels a concentrated burst of energy to wipe them out, which shreds the entire pack into nothingness in a single heartbeat. So the Wen heiress asks if he is actually a god, but he just laughs it off, claiming he is only looking for an easy ride. This Phase 1 rankings drop, and Lin Yuan lands in 7th place while the top spots are dominated by the Infinity Group. He teases the Wen heiress about whether his performance messed with her standing, so she demands he pay her back in cash, only for him to suggest a different kind of payment. Flustered by his comment, she quickly pivots to warning him that the abyss is getting too dangerous for him to continue. But Lin Yuan brushes off the concern, insisting that getting her to safety is the only priority right now. This heiress admits his power is legit and insists he track her down once he escapes the abyss, and Lin Yuan just walks off, promising that their paths will cross again. Then a supply drone drops his 7th place reward package right at his feet, which includes 20 A-rank serums and an awakening stone, giving him the perfect gear to jump from rank 6 to 9, so he immediately downs the serums to kick off a triple breakthrough. Lin Yuan is finally on the verge of his full awakening, and he wastes no time equipping the stability gem to his abyssal silver spider cart, which removes all usage limits for the Chaos Zone so he can focus on hunting his target. But a system warning pops up about lethal pollution levels, so he decides to grab the target and get out fast. And while he is ready to risk it all, the girl he is hunting is already prepared to die before she will ever be enslaved again. A random challenger just showed up to take Lin Yuan down a peg, claiming he's going to kick him out of the top 10, and Lin Yuan senses the target lock on his position, realizing he has some unwanted company. But the scene shifts to a flashback 3 months ago at the martial arts arena, where senior sister Ning approaches her junior to ask for a massive favor regarding the upcoming awakening exam, which leaves the junior sister completely caught off guard. Since Ning is usually the type to handle everything on her own, and it turns out the request is actually about escaping the Abyss battlefield, which is the only thing that matters to her right now. Senior sister Ning commands her junior to ensure Lin Yuan survives the upcoming exam at any cost, and the junior immediately pivots to teasing her about the rumors that he is actually her kept man. Wondering if this seemingly weak guy has some secret trait that justifies all the special treatment, but Ning releases a crushing wave of pressure that leaves the junior scrambling to swear she will protect him with her life. And with that vow locked in, Ning finally considers the mission accomplished. Ning laments that her own fate is sealed, but tells her junior she can still choose her own partner. This junior sister scans the group of recruits, finally spotting the specific guy she was ordered to keep alive. Ning watches from above as the junior locks onto the target and the weight of the mission hits home. Knowing this is her final task before descending into hell, she vows to protect the kid at all costs. She launches herself into the fray with a massive burst of energy, ready to fulfill her promise to Ning. A massive red strike slams into the terrain, signaling that Murong Yuan has finally unleashed his lethal sky curtain technique. This other top-ranked recruits realize Murong Yuan is hunting Lin Yuan with a move that can kill even an awakened, and they know the kid is in serious trouble. This junior sister watches the incoming blast and realizes that Lin Yuan's usual tactics won't hold up against this level of raw power. She knows she has to step in to save him, even if it means sacrificing her own life to block the strike. Launching herself directly into the path of the energy, she intercepts the blow and locks onto the attacker to protect her target. Lin Yuan calls out the guy who just tried to snipe him, demanding to know why he is being targeted. Murong Yuan promises a swift death, but Lin Yuan just brushes off the threat with a sarcastic remark about his own mortality. Murong Yuan claims the entire Murong bloodline as his property, specifically calling Murong Yin his own, and vows to erase Lin Yuan for daring to influence her. Lin Yuan fixates on that possessive claim, clearly not taking the threat to his life as seriously as the insult to his ally. Murong Yuan doubles down on his twisted claim of ownership, declaring that she will remain his property for as long as he draws breath. Murong Yuan keeps running his mouth about what he will do to Murong Yin once Lin Yuan is dead, but Lin Yuan decides he has heard enough and activates his max-level mental power to lock him down, and with a flick of his wrist, he exerts a crushing telekinetic grip that slams Murong Yuan into the dirt, leaving the guy completely unable to handle the pressure as he gets pinned by the sheer force of the attack, and Lin Yuan drops the reveal that the spider card boost is exactly why he is getting folded so easily. This system announces Murong Yuan's death to everyone in the Abyss, warning the remaining candidates to stay alert. Other recruits are losing their minds trying to figure out how a top-tier seed got taken out so easily. Meanwhile, the higher-ups are scrambling in their meeting room, questioning if the entire exam is still worth running. One of the lords demands the truth about the cause of death, refusing to accept the secrecy surrounding the incident. This official blames a data malfunction while promising an investigation, but the reality is just that a pervert got what he deserved. Murong Yin realizes the master-servant shackle binding her since childhood has vanished, and she starts questioning if Lin Yuan actually took out her cousin. This realization hits that the guy she was supposed to protect as a mere kept pretty boy is actually the one who saved her, and she struggles to process the power gap. Meanwhile, the chaos continues across the Abyss battlefield, where the exam is turning into a total slaughterhouse. A mysterious swordswoman cuts through the local threats with ease, clearing a path through the battlefield. She pauses to note that Lin Yuan needs to stay alive for the rest of the exam, confident that Murong Yin has him covered for now. This system just dropped a bombshell that the second round is now a monster limb collection quest, and the Chu Xiao second squad is already losing their minds over the sudden shift from survival to active hunting. But the point breakdown reveals the Slaughter Angel is the top-tier target worth a massive 1,000,000 points, which happens to be the exact monster Lin Yuan needs to capture for his own system upgrade. So he realizes that securing the Transcendence Crystal is going to turn this entire battlefield into a bloodbath. This recruits are losing their minds because the trial difficulty just jumped to half-step awakened. But that 1,000,000-point bounty is keeping them glued to the game. And since the Slaughter Angel can one-shot even high-level awakened fighters, the risk-to-reward ratio is basically a death trap, which is why the system forces a 3-minute timer to lock in their targets before the squad can even process the danger. But Lin Yuan doesn't even break a sweat, nonchalantly locking in his choice like he is just browsing a menu, and the system confirms only 4 contestants are crazy enough to hunt the Slaughter Angel, flashing their profiles for the entire battlefield to see. This rest of the recruits are losing their minds because the top 4 contestants actually picked the Slaughter Angel, assuming they've formed a temporary alliance to take it down before turning on each other. Lin Yuan knows he can't outrun them, so he decides to either beat them to the target or just wait for the perfect moment to snipe the prize. He kicks his speed into high gear, closing the distance to the battlefield to set up an ambush while the others are busy. Over in the Chaos Zone, a group of desperate recruits tries to recruit senior sister Huang into their alliance. Admitting they have no chance of soloing the Slaughter Angel, she doesn't even hesitate to shut them down, telling the group to get lost before they can even finish their pitch. Huang Ying, the powerhouse from the Black Gold Dojo, shuts down the alliance request without a second thought because she is convinced Lin Yuan cheated his way to the top and is fuming that he is already drawing attention from elite dojos, so she plans to corner him into a Fire Dragon Dojo contract, giving her the green light to take him out permanently. And while the rejected group realizes they have no shot at recruiting her, they are still desperate to find a way forward. But Lin Yuan's aura is completely masked, which only makes Huang Ying more determined to track him down and force that deal. This girl he just saved is pouring out her thanks, but Lin Yuan shuts it down to focus on the Chaos Zone, leaving Wang Mo in the dust, and she is left completely baffled when he suddenly vanishes into thin air, only to reappear right behind her to call out her amateur attempt at tailing him, which leaves her totally flustered now that she has been caught red-handed. Wang Mo is still reeling from the close call, and the tears start flowing because she feels completely indebted to her savior. But Lin Yuan clarifies he only intervened because the guy was in his way. So Wang Mo insists that regardless of his motive, he still pulled her out of hell and she is forever in his debt. And Lin Yuan brushes it off, telling her that living a good life is the only repayment he actually wants. Wang Mo is still overcome with emotion, struggling to hold back her tears as she listens to him. Lin Yuan tells her to close her eyes and count to 100, clearly trying to get her to look away. She assumes he is going for a kiss and gets all flustered, promising she won't get in the way of his thing with the senior sister. Before he can even respond, a massive pillar of energy slams into the ground right nearby, cutting the moment short. The surrounding recruits witness the impact, wondering if they are looking at some kind of miracle or just another disaster. This ground erupts in pillars of light, dragging every nearby recruit into a forced teleportation, and as the group scrambles to regain their footing, the reality of their situation sinks in, because the angel triggered the Eye of the Abyss in a blind rage, leaving everyone wondering what could have possibly set off such a massive tantrum. But the entity is already hovering above them, pulsing with enough raw energy to level the entire zone. And with those glowing red eyes locked onto its targets, it is clear that nobody is walking away from this one easily. Lin Yuan admits he was the one pulling the strings behind Wang Mo's current predicament, and he casually drops that he is actually the final boss of this trial, with organizers watching the whole thing go down. Wang Mo is still standing there with her eyes closed, fully expecting a kiss, but she opens them to find he has already vanished into thin air, leaving her completely confused. She then pivots to address the senior sister, clarifying that her interest in Lin Yuan is strictly about repaying a debt rather than romantic competition, before wishing him luck on his own path. This angel of slaughter has locked everyone inside its domain, leaving the recruits to wonder what the hell it actually wants from them. And the moment they realize an attack is imminent, the tension in the air hits a breaking point, because the entity unleashes a massive barrage of energy beams that tear through the entire area. So the ground erupts in a volcanic inferno that makes the sky look like it is literally melting. And as the heat intensifies, the survivors are left questioning if this is the start of the so-called purification. This recruits realize they are sitting ducks unless they take down the angel immediately, and the heat is already becoming unbearable. A system alert confirms the worst, revealing the angel has evolved into an S-rank threat that is way out of their league. Organizers promise that the 5 fortress leaders are on their way, but the situation on the ground is rapidly deteriorating. Panic sets in as the group realizes the reinforcements will not arrive before they are turned into ash, so they pin their final hopes on Huang Ying, the fortress's undisputed powerhouse, who can even take down high-level Awakened. Huang Ying isn't buying the recruits' sob story, flat-out questioning if they are even worth the effort of saving. She has her own agenda to handle before playing the hero, so she turns her back on the chaos. This group watches in confusion as their only hope for survival walks away, wondering what could possibly be more important than the world ending. Ignoring their bewilderment, she calls out for Lin Yuan to show himself immediately. Lin Yuan steps up to answer the summons, asking if she really needs something from him. This recruits are losing their minds, wondering why Huang Ying is targeting Lin Yuan instead of the top-tier fighters, and she immediately cuts through the noise by slamming an F-rank contract from the Fire Dragon gym in his face, leaving the crowd baffled since Fire Dragon is a bottom-tier outfit, making this offer look like a blatant slap in the face. Huang Ying doubles down on the disrespect, dismissing Lin Yuan as a fraud who only climbed the ranks by riding on women's coattails. So the pressure is on as she demands he accept the deal, forcing him to weigh his pride against her ultimatum. Lin Yuan flatly rejects the contract, making it clear he isn't playing along with her power games, and the surrounding crowd immediately starts chirping, convinced he is just a fraud who is about to get humbled by the powerhouse. But Lin Yuan doesn't wait for her next move, delivering a stinging slap right to her backside that leaves a mark for everyone to see, and he calmly notes that if she wants to talk about insults, she should probably start with that one, which sends Huang Ying into a blind rage as she lunges at him, screaming that he has officially crossed the line. Huang Ying launches a full-force strike, but Lin Yuan effortlessly evades the blow, causing the ground to erupt in a massive shockwave. Lin Yuan keeps the pressure on with a sarcastic remark about the physical feedback from his earlier move, and Huang Ying suddenly finds her limbs locked in place, realizing with a jolt that she has lost all control over her body. This realization that she is completely paralyzed hits her, so she demands to know what kind of underhanded technique he used to trap her. Lin Yuan just keeps the insults coming, suggesting that maybe his touch was simply too much for her to handle as he retreats. Lin Yuan confirms that the paralysis bug card is the real reason he managed to lock her down for 30 seconds. Bystanders start whispering that he's clearly got some hidden tricks, guessing that Huang Ying's lack of experience with men is why she folded so easily. Huang Ying isn't having any of it, screaming that she's going to end him for the humiliation. Taunting her to come and get him, he takes off into the distance, but the crowd starts panicking because he's flying straight into the Angel's forbidden 500-meter danger zone. Lin Yuan dives straight into the danger zone, drawing the Angel's massive vortex of fire toward him. But he just hovers there while the monster spins its lethal energy, completely ignoring his presence. And the onlookers are losing their minds because the Angel refuses to strike, leaving him totally untouched in the Black Death Zone, which makes sense since he's holding an elite headhunter card that masks his aura and grants him total flame immunity for 3 minutes. So Huang Ying screams in frustration, demanding to know how long he plans to keep hiding behind his cheap tricks. Lin Yuan isn't just hiding, he is baiting the boss to kick off the main event. And the Angel of Slaughter finally snaps, activating its true power, as a lethal rain of energy slams into the ground, signaling the start of Judgment Mode, which forces the terrified crowd to realize that half of them are about to be wiped out, because this mode locks everyone into forced duels where the loser gets erased from existence. Huang Ying warns Lin Yuzhe that his reliance on the rules is only a temporary shield, and the rest of the crowd is panicking, hoping to avoid a high-level match until the gym leaders finally show up. But the platform flares Talcath lethal energy, confirming that the forced duels have officially begun, and the system locks rank 42 Gu Zheng into a fight against rank 34 Lin Yuzhe, so Gu Zheng immediately tries to cut a deal, begging for a truce to avoid getting erased. Lin Yuzhe ignores the plea for a truce and strikes Gu Zheng down from behind, leaving the guy to whine about a cheap sneak attack while he justifies the move as a necessity for survival. But the system ignores their drama and forces a new match, and Lin Yuzhe realizes he is staring down the very goddess he provoked earlier, so the crowd watches with glee as his own trash talk lands him in a death match against her. This woman mocks Lin Yuzhe by calling him a kept man, and she demands to know why he stopped running since she has him trapped in her palm, but he remains completely unimpressed by her posturing, while the crowd jeers at the lopsided matchup and bets on how pathetic his begging will be, so she forces a final choice between kneeling or crawling, promising a slightly less painful death if he just submits. Lin Yuzhe keeps his cool and asks the goddess exactly how she plans to end him, and she responds by charging up a punch powerful enough to make him explode on the spot, which terrifies the crowd since that level of force could level the entire battlefield and turn the kept man into dust. But she doesn't hold back and launches the strike with everything she has. Yet Lin Yuzhe doesn't even flinch and meets her massive attack with a direct counter of his own. Lin Yuzhe's counter connects with enough force to shatter the arena, and the goddess is sent reeling, completely outmatched by the sudden shift in power. This crowd is left speechless, struggling to process how the strongest woman in the room went down in one hit. His secret is a skill that lets him borrow 1/5 of a nearby monster's strength, turning that stolen power into a lethal vortex that pins the goddess down. This goddess realizes Lin Yuzhe has been holding back his true power all along, and he tosses a soul contract at her feet, demanding she serve him as a slave for 3 years or face death. This crowd watches in disbelief as the tables turn, realizing the guy they thought was a pushover is actually the one pulling the strings. Lin Yuzhe tells her this is a mercy rather than a death sentence, giving her exactly 10 seconds to sign before she is erased from existence. This countdown begins, and she has no choice but to face the reality of her new master's ultimatum. This goddess finally caves and signs the soul contract, spitting out insults as she realizes her defeat is absolute. Lin Yuzhe doesn't miss a beat, rubbing it in that the arena's supposed strongest fighter is now his personal slave. But the situation turns lethal when a massive energy blast erupts, aimed at wiping everything off the map, so he counters the incoming annihilation by activating his concealment share skill to tap into a monster's stolen strength. This blast fails to land its mark, leaving the goddess broken and forced to accept her new reality. This winged fighter is completely blindsided by the sudden shift in the battle, and Lin Yuzhe floats above the fray, coolly ordering the red-haired woman to launch her assault, so she charges forward with her spear, pouring every ounce of her power into a desperate strike, unleashing a massive windblade frenzy slash that leaves the winged fighter scrambling to react, but the attack slams into a shimmering barrier, proving that even her strongest move isn't enough to break through. This red-haired woman's strike fails against the barrier, and the resulting backlash sends her flying backward through the air. Lin Yuzhe doesn't hesitate to capitalize on the opening, unleashing a cross-shaped energy wave to seize his target, and the system confirms the capture process has started as glowing threads bind the winged fighter in place. This target vanishes into thin air before the countdown even hits 0, leaving the spectators in total shock as they realize the angel has been completely wiped from the sky. This crowd is now wondering if Lin Yuzhe has a broken talent for suppressing female opponents, since even that angel couldn't escape him.